The waves crashed against the rusty fishing boat as Captain Elias pulled in another empty net. Another bad day. The sea was rough, the sky gray, and the fish were nowhere to be found. He sighed, wiping salt water from his beard, when something caught his eye. A dark shape bobbing in the water. At first, he thought it was driftwood. Then it moved. His heart jumped. A dog? Out here? Miles from shore? Elias quickly steered the boat closer, his hands shaking. The animal was struggling, its fur soaked, paws weakly paddling. A German shepherd, strong, but exhaustion dragged it down. As the boat neared, the dog lifted its head, eyes locking onto Elias. Not fear, not aggression, something deeper. A silent plea. Elias reached out with the fishing net, scooping the dog up. The moment it collapsed onto the deck, he saw the collar, worn, scratched, but with a metal tag still hanging. He flipped it over. If found, return to Lighthouse Point. Reward. No name, no phone number, just those words. Elias wrapped the shivering dog in a tarp, rubbing its fur to warm it up. The dog didn't growl, didn't snap. It just stared at him, as if memorizing his face. Then, beneath the dog's front leg, Elias spotted something else. A deep, half-healed wound. Not from the sea, something sharper, deliberate. Who throws a dog into the ocean? And why? The German shepherd's chest rose and fell in ragged breaths as Elias carried him below deck. The boat's engine hummed softly, the only sound in the growing storm. The dog's fur was matted with salt and grime, his paws cracked from whatever hell he had endured before the sea claimed him. Elias grabbed an old towel, rubbing him down gently. The dog flinched when the fabric touched the wound under his leg. A clean cut, too precise to be an accident. "Easy, boy," Elias muttered. "Not gonna hurt you." The dog's gaze never left him, not scared, not submissive, watching, waiting. Elias reached for the radio, static buzzing as he adjusted the frequency. "Coast Guard, this is the Marlin's Wake. Picked up a stray, German shepherd, male, about 6 or 7 years old. Found him drifting near the northern marker. Tag says Lighthouse Point. Anyone report a missing dog?" Silence. Then a crackled reply. "Negative, Marlin's Wake. No missing dogs logged. You bringing him in?" Elias hesitated. Lighthouse Point was a 3-hour detour. His nets were empty, his fuel low. But the dog's eyes held something, an intelligence, a silent demand, like he needed to go back. "Yeah," Elias finally said, "I'll take him." As he turned, the dog suddenly stood, ears pricked. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Elias followed his stare to the boat's small window, just in time to see a shadow move on the deck above. Someone was on board. Elias's blood turned cold. He hadn't seen another boat for hours. The dog's growl deepened, his body tense. Then a voice, rough, unfamiliar, called down, "Hey, fisherman." "That dog belonged to you?" Elias's hand instinctively went to the fillet knife on the counter. "Found him in the water," he called back, voice steady. "You missing a dog?" A pause, too long. "Nah," the voice finally said, "but I'll take him off your hands." The dog's lips peeled back in a silent snarl. Elias's mind raced. No one just happened to be out here. No one asked for a dog they didn't own, and then he saw it. The glint of a pistol grip in the stranger's waistband. The radio crackled again, the Coast Guard's voice cutting through the tension. "Marlin's Wake, be advised, we just got a report. Armed robbery at Lighthouse Point 2 nights ago. Suspects fled by boat. One of them had a dog." Elias's breath caught. The German shepherd's wound, the too convenient stranger, the tag with no name. This wasn't just a lost dog, this was a witness, and someone wanted him dead. The knife felt slick in Elias's grip as he slowly backed away from the stairs leading to the deck. The dog pressed against his leg, muscles coiled tight, every instinct screaming danger. The stranger's boots creaked overhead, moving toward the hatch. One wrong move, and this would turn bloody. Elias's mind raced. His boat wasn't built for fights. It was a rusted old trawler with more patches than original hull. The radio was his only lifeline, but the Coast Guard couldn't reach him in time. He needed to think, fast. The dog suddenly lunged forward, teeth bared, just as the hatch swung open. The stranger, a wiry man with a jagged scar across his cheek, froze mid-step, one hand hovering near his gun. His eyes flicked between Elias and the snarling shepherd. "Call him off," the man warned, voice tight. Elias didn't move. "You, first. Hands where I can see 'em." A tense silence stretched. Then the man smirked. "You really think this ends well for you? That dog's worth more than your whole damn boat." The words hung in the air like a threat. Elias's pulse pounded in his ears. Worth how? A robbery witness? Something else? Before he could react, the dog lunged again, not at the man, but at the radio. His paw slammed down on the transmit button, and the Coast Guard's last message repeated through the static. "Armed robbery at Lighthouse Point. Suspects fled by boat." The stranger's face twisted in fury. He yanked the gun free. Bang! Elias flinched, but the shot hadn't come from the stranger. It came from outside. A voice boomed over a megaphone. "This is the Coast Guard. Drop your weapon and step onto the deck." The stranger swore, whirling toward the sound. Through the porthole, Elias saw the sleek white cutter pulling alongside, armed officers training rifles on the boat. The dog had bought them time, and the Coast Guard had followed the radio signal. The stranger made a split-second decision. He bolted up the stairs, gun raised, 2 more shots, then silence. Elias didn't breathe until a Coast Guard officer appeared at the hatch. "Clear. You all right in there?" He nodded numbly, staring at the dog. The shepherd sat calmly now, panting slightly, as if he'd known exactly how this would play out. The officer helped Elias onto the deck. The stranger lay face down, cuffed, bleeding from a leg wound. But Elias barely noticed. His attention locked onto the duffel bag the man had dropped. Its zipper half open, spilling bundles of cash, and a single, blood-stained dog tag. Not the one around. The shepherd's neck. Another one. Elias picked it up, turning it over. The engraving was faint but clear. K9, Unit 7, Axel. If found, contact Harbor PD. His stomach dropped. This wasn't just a robbery. The dog wasn't just a witness. He was a cop, and the men who threw him overboard had no idea he'd survived. The Coast Guard cutter's floodlights bathed the deck in harsh white light as 2 officers hauled the wounded suspect toward their vessel. Elias stood frozen, the blood-stained K9 tag digging into his palm. The German shepherd, no, Axel, sat rigid beside him, eyes locked on the duffel bag spilling cash onto the deck. Every muscle in the dog's body was tense. His ears pricked forward like he was listening for something beneath the roar of the engines and shouted orders. One of the Coast Guard officers, a broad-shouldered woman with a no-nonsense expression, stepped forward. "Captain Elias Vasquez?" she asked, scanning his face. When he nodded, she continued, "We need you to come aboard for questioning. And the dog, he's evidence now." Axel let out a low growl as another officer reached for his collar. Elias instinctively put a hand on the dog's back. "Easy," he murmured. Then to the officer, "He's not just evidence. That tag says he's K9, Harbor PD, which means someone tried to kill a police dog." The female officer's expression darkened. She exchanged a glance with her partner before nodding. "We know. That's why Detective Moreno is on his way." Moreno. The name sent a visible tremor through Axel. His ears flattened, and a whine escaped his throat. Not fear, but recognition. Elias frowned. "He know this dog?" Before the officer could answer, Axel suddenly lunged toward the duffel bag, snatching a crumpled piece of paper from between the cash bundles. He dropped it at Elias's feet, then backed away, tail stiff. Elias picked it up. It was a shipping manifest, smeared with blood and seawater, but the words were still legible. Lighthouse Point Marina. Dock 7. Midnight. Package delivery. Code Shark Bait. The female officer snatched the paper, her face going pale. "Oh, God," she whispered. "They're using the same drop point." Elias's blood ran cold. "Same as what?" She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed her radio. "All units, code red." Possible active operation at Lighthouse Point. Suspect K9. Axel is alive and on scene. Repeat, Axel is alive. They don't know he's here. Chaos erupted. Officers scrambled, radios crackled, and the cutter's engines roared to life. Through the frenzy, Elias locked eyes with Axel. The dog's gaze was sharp, focused, full of urgency, like he was trying to tell him something. Then it clicked. "They're not just robbers," Elias said slowly. "They're cops, dirty cops. And Axel here, he was supposed to be dead because he found out." The female officer froze. "How the hell do you know that?" Elias pointed at Axel. The dog had his teeth bared again, but not in aggression. He was smiling, the way dogs do when they solve a puzzle. And clamped gently between his jaws was a small, silver key no one had noticed before. A locker key from Harbor PD's evidence room. The key glinted in Axel's mouth as the Coast Guard cutter sliced through the black waves toward Lighthouse Point. Elias sat on the deck, his fingers buried in the dog's damp fur, trying to process what was happening. The female officer, Lieutenant Reyes, she'd introduced herself, kept glancing between Axel and the radio, her jaw clenched tight. "They'll know we're coming," she muttered. "If there's dirty cops involved, they'll have scanners. They'll hear every word we say." Elias watched Axel spit the key onto the deck. The dog nudged it toward him with his nose, then let out a soft whine. "He wants us to understand something," Elias said, picking up the key. It was small, unremarkable, except for the numbers etched into the metal. 117-B. Reyes's breath caught. "Evidence locker 117-B, that's..." "Controlled substances," finished a new voice. A man in a rumpled suit stood in the doorway, his face shadowed with stubble and exhaustion. Detective Moreno. The moment he appeared, Axel's entire body went rigid. Not with joy, with warning. Moreno took a step forward. "That's where we keep the confiscated narcotics. The drugs that keep disappearing from our evidence room." His eyes never left Axel. "You found it, didn't you, boy? You found where they've been stashing it all." Elias felt the tension crackle in the air. Something was wrong. Axel wasn't wagging his tail. His lips were curled back just slightly, his body positioned between Elias and the detective. Reyes seemed to notice, too. Her hand drifted toward her sidearm. "Moreno," she said carefully, "how did you get here so fast?" The detective smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I was already on patrol when I heard the call. Lucky break." He reached into his jacket. "I've got Axel's records here." Axel exploded into motion. With a deafening bark, he launched himself at Moreno, knocking the detective backward. The folder flew open, scattering papers, and Elias saw it. A photograph of Axel in a police vest, and beside it, a nearly identical photo of another German shepherd. Twins. Reyes drew her weapon. "That's not Axel," she breathed. "That's his brother, his retired brother, which means—" Moreno moved faster than Elias could react. One moment he was on the ground. The next he had a gun pressed against Axel's head. "Clever dog," he snarled. "Should have drowned when we threw you overboard." The truth hit Elias like a tidal wave. Moreno wasn't here to help. He was the one Axel had been running from, the one who'd tried to kill him. And now they were racing straight toward a marina full of armed, corrupt cops who thought their problem had been solved at sea. Axel's eyes met Elias's. In them, he saw no fear, only resolve. And a silent message. The key wasn't just evidence, it was bait, and they'd just sprung the trap. The boat's engines roared as Lighthouse Point's silhouette emerged from the stormy darkness. Elias gripped the railing, the cold metal biting into his palms as he watched Moreno press the gun harder against Axel's temple. The detective's other hand held a radio, the channel open, broadcasting every word to his corrupt colleagues waiting ashore. "Change of plans," Moreno hissed into the device. "The mutt survived. I'm bringing him in, and the fisherman who fished him out." His eyes locked onto Elias. "Seems our K9 made a new friend." Axel's muscles tensed beneath his soaked fur. His intelligent eyes darted between Moreno's trigger finger and the approaching dock, calculating. Elias saw the moment the dog made his decision. A barely perceptible shift in weight, a tightening of the haunches. Lieutenant Reyes edged closer, her service weapon still drawn but useless with Axel in the line of fire. "Moreno," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. "You're a 15-year veteran. Think about what you're doing." The detective's laugh was hollow. "I thought about the $2 million in that duffel bag. Thought about how easy it was to lose evidence when you're the one logging it." His gaze flicked to the key, still clutched in Elias's hand. "That little piece of metal? That's our retirement plan, or it was, until this damned dog started sniffing around locker 117B. The cutter suddenly jerked as it hit a swell, sending everyone stumbling. In that split second of distraction, Axel struck, not at Moreno, but at the radio in his hand. The dog's powerful jaws crunched down, severing the connection mid-transmission. Moreno roared in anger, swinging the gun toward Axel's head. Elias lunged without thinking. His fishing knife flashed in the deck lights as he drove it into Moreno's forearm. The gun clattered to the deck as the detective screamed. Chaos erupted. Reyes tackled Moreno while 2 Coast Guard officers rushed to restrain him. Axel bolted to the bow, barking frantically at the rapidly approaching dock. Elias scrambled after him, his heart pounding. What he saw made his blood freeze. Dock 7 was swarming with figures, some in police uniforms, others in civilian clothes, all armed. And they weren't hiding anymore. Spotlights from the marina suddenly illuminated the cutter, blinding the crew. "They know we're coming," Reyes shouted over the din. She tossed Elias a life vest. "We need to abort." Axel's sharp bark cut her off. The dog was staring at something in the water, something moving fast toward the dock. Elias squinted through the glare, a speedboat, unmarked, loaded with duffel bags identical to the one they'd found. The exchange, Elias realized aloud. They're not just hiding drugs. They're moving them. Tonight. Moreno laughed from where he was pinned on the deck. "You're too late, fisherman. That shipment's worth more than your pathetic life." Axel growled, his eyes locked on the speedboat. Then, without warning, he leaped, not toward the dock, but into the churning black water, swimming with powerful strokes toward the speedboat. "He's going after them alone," Elias breathed. Rears grabbed his arm. "That's not just a dog. That's a trained K-9 with narcotics detection training, and he's heading straight into a firefight. The cutter's engines surged as the captain made a hard turn, trying to intercept the speedboat. But Elias knew they'd never make it in time. Somewhere in the darkness, Axel was swimming toward certain death. And the only evidence that could bring down an entire corrupt police division was sinking beneath the waves with a duffel bag full of cash. The cold ocean water swallowed Axel whole as he disappeared beneath the black waves. Elias's heart hammered against his ribs as he leaned over the railing, searching the choppy surface for any sign of the German shepherd. The speedboat's engines roared in the distance, its wake cutting through the water like a blade. "Turn this boat around," Elias shouted to the Coast Guard captain. "We have to. Follow him." Lieutenant Reyes grabbed his arm, her grip iron tight. "We can't. Look." She pointed toward Dock 7, where armed figures were now fanning out, weapons raised. A spotlight from the marina swept across the cutter, illuminating the crew in its harsh glare. A gunshot rang out, then another, pinging off the metal hull. The Coast Guard captain cursed and slammed the throttle, veering the cutter away from the dock. "We're sitting ducks here. We need backup." Elias's hands clenched into fists. Axel was out there alone, swimming toward a boat full of armed men who had already tried to kill him once. And the key, the damn locker key, was still in Elias's pocket. Then, a miracle. A dark shape broke the surface near the speedboat. Axel's head emerged, his powerful strokes carrying him silently through the water. He reached the boat's stern and, impossibly, leaped onto the diving platform, his movements fluid and silent. No one on board noticed. Elias held his breath. Axel disappeared into the speedboat's cabin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, chaos. The speedboat's engine suddenly screamed as it veered violently off course, nearly capsizing as it swerved back toward the marina. Shouts erupted from on board. A figure stumbled into view, clutching his arm. Axel's jaws clamped around his wrist. Another man lunged at the dog, only to be knocked backward as the boat slammed into a wave. "What the hell is he doing?" Reyes breathed. Elias understood first. "He's steering them back, toward the dock, toward the police." The speedboat was now on a collision course with the marina, its throttle jammed at full speed. The armed men on Dock 7 realized it too late. They scrambled to get out of the way as the boat careened toward them. Then, impact. The speedboat plowed into the dock with a deafening crunch of fiberglass and wood. Duffel bags tumbled into the water. Men shouted, some falling into the sea, others firing wild shots into the air. And in the middle of it all, Axel. The German shepherd leaped from the wreckage onto the dock, his body a blur as he darted between panicked figures. He wasn't running away. He was hurting them, driving them straight into the path of the arriving Harbor PD cruisers, their sirens wailing in the distance. Elias's pulse pounded. He's not just escaping, he's making sure they can't run. But then, another twist. A new figure emerged from the marina's shadows. A man in a police captain's uniform. He didn't run like the others. He stood calmly, a pistol in his hand, its barrel rising, not toward Axel but toward the nearest corrupt officer. "Nobody talks," the captain said coldly. The gun fired, a body dropped. Axel froze, his ears pricked. The police captain's gaze locked onto the dog. He raised the gun again. Elias didn't think. He grabbed the nearest rifle from a Coast Guard officer, took aim, and fired. The shot went wide, but it was enough. The police captain ducked behind cover as Axel bolted, disappearing into the marina's maze of boats and warehouses. Reyes turned to Elias, her face pale. That was Captain Duran, the head of Harbor PD's narcotics division. Elias's blood ran cold. The corruption went higher than they'd thought. And Axel was now loose in a marina full of armed, desperate men who knew he was the only witness who could bury them. The speedboat's wreckage smoldered in the water. Duffel bags full of drugs and cash floated amid the debris. And somewhere in the darkness, a trained K-9 with a target on his back was hunting the most dangerous prey of all, the men who'd betrayed their badges. Elias's boots hit the splintered dock with a thud as he sprinted toward the marina's maze of warehouses, the Coast Guard's floodlights casting long shadows across the chaos. Gunfire still popped in the distance, but his focus narrowed on one thing: finding Axel before Captain Duran did. The German shepherd couldn't have gone far. The acrid smell of burning fiberglass stung his nostrils as he rounded a stack of crab traps. Then he heard it, a low, warning growl from the darkness between two shipping containers. "Axel," Elias whispered, crouching low. Two glowing eyes emerged from the shadows. The dog stepped forward, his muzzle streaked with something dark. Not blood, oil. And clamped gently in his jaws was a waterproof cell phone. The screen cracked, but still illuminated. Elias's breath caught. "Where did you—" Axel dropped the phone at his feet. The screen showed a single text message. "Evidence locker 117-B rigged. Burn the marina. Leave no witnesses. Duran." A chill ran down Elias's spine. This wasn't just about drugs or stolen money. They were covering something bigger. The dog suddenly stiffened, ears swiveling toward Warehouse 7. A metallic screech echoed through the night, a door being forced open. Then another sound made Elias's blood freeze. A whimpering puppy. Axel's reaction was instantaneous. His hackles raised, teeth bared in a silent snarl. Without hesitation, he bolted toward the sound, disappearing into the maze of containers. Elias scrambled after him, nearly tripping over a loose dock line. As he rounded the corner, the scene before him made his stomach lurch. Captain Duran stood in the warehouse doorway, his polished badge glinting under the emergency lights. At his feet crouched a shivering German shepherd puppy, no more than 6 months old, its fur matted with filth. The puppy's ears perked at Axel's approach, letting out a pitiful whine. "Ah, there's my star K9, Duran sneered, pressing his gun to the puppy's head. "I wondered if you'd come for your son." Elias froze. "Son?" Axel stopped dead, his entire body trembling with barely restrained fury. The pieces clicked together, the similar markings, the way the puppy's eyes mirrored Axel's. This wasn't just a random dog, this was family. Duran's smile turned vicious. "Took us months to track down your litter after you went rogue. This was the only one left." He cocked the hammer. "Now, the key, or I put a bullet in the last piece of bloodline you'll ever have." Axel's gaze flicked to Elias. Something passed between them, an understanding. The key wasn't just evidence, it was leverage, and Duran was desperate enough to kill for it. Elias slowly reached into his pocket. "All right, take it." He held up the key, letting it glint in the light. "But you'll have to come get it." Duran's eyes narrowed. Then, without warning, Axel lunged, not at Duran, but at the warehouse's fire alarm. His powerful jaws clamped down on the lever. Sirens wailed to life. Sprinklers erupted from the ceiling. And somewhere deep in the warehouse a new sound joined the chaos, the hiss of gasoline meeting flame. Duran's face went white. "You stupid mutt! That locker's wired to—" The explosion blew out the warehouse windows. Elias hit the ground as shrapnel whistled overhead. When he looked up, Duran was gone, vanished into the smoke. The puppy yelped, scrambling toward Axel, who stood protectively over him. But the real horror was inside Warehouse 7. Through the billowing smoke, Elias glimpsed row upon row of kennels, dozens of them, and inside each one, police dogs, Elias whispered. Not just any dogs. Axel's former K9 unit, all of them, drugged, muzzled, waiting to be shipped overseas to the highest bidder. Axel's mournful howl cut through the night, a sound of pure, shattered betrayal. This wasn't just a drug operation. The Harbor PD wasn't just stealing evidence. They were selling their own. The acrid smoke burned Elias's lungs as he crawled toward the warehouse, Axel and the puppy pressing close to his sides. Through the shattered windows, the horrific scene became clearer. At least 30 kennels lined the walls, each containing a malnourished police dog. Some wore shredded K9 vests. Others had fresh scars where their department tattoos had been crudely removed. Axel let out a pained whimper as he recognized his former unit. A massive Belgian Malinois with a torn ear lifted its head weakly at the sound. Their eyes met, and the dying dog managed a single thump of its tail before collapsing. Elias's hands shook with rage. They've been selling their own K9s. Then he saw the crates. Stacked beside the kennels were wooden shipping containers stenciled with military codes. Russian, Chinese, Arabic. Each had a corresponding file folder showing training records and, Elias's stomach turned, breeding pedigrees. This isn't just about money, he realized aloud. They're selling police-trained dogs to foreign militaries, enemies. Axel suddenly stiffened, his nose twitching. Before Elias could stop him, the German shepherd bolted deeper into the burning warehouse, leaping over fallen beams toward a locked office door. The puppy tried to follow, but Elias scooped him up. "Damn it, Axel, we have to go!" The dog ignored him, scratching frantically at the office door. Then Elias heard it, a faint beeping coming from inside. Not a fire alarm, a countdown. 5:23, 5:22, 5:21. Elias's blood turned to ice. The entire warehouse was rigged to blow. He sprinted after Axel, kicking open the office door. The sight inside made his knees buckle. Captain Duran lay slumped against a filing cabinet, his uniform soaked with blood from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the shoulder. In his trembling hand was a detonator. At his feet sprawled 3 more bodies, Harbor PD officers, their throats slit. "Had to clean house," Duran gasped, his free hand stroking the fur of a dead Rottweiler at his side. The dog's service collar read K9 Brutus, Narcotics Division. Axel let out a grief-stricken howl. Duran chuckled wetly. "Brutus was always my favorite. Trained him from a pup. Just like I trained you, Axel." His bloodshot eyes found the German shepherd. "Shoulda put you down when you started sniffing around the shipping manifests." Elias edged closer to the detonator. "You're trafficking police dogs to enemy states. That's treason. Business," Duran corrected. "A Malinois goes for $250,000 on the black market. Fully trained, 7 figures. He coughed up blood. "But you'll never prove it. In 3 minutes, this whole place goes up in flames. No evidence, no witnesses." Axel growled, inching forward. Duran's finger hovered over the detonator button. "Ah, boy. One move and I blow us all to hell." His gaze flicked to the puppy in Elias's arms. "Though maybe I should take your son with me," the puppy whimpered, burying its face in Elias's jacket. Then, a miracle. The dead Rottweiler at Duran's feet suddenly twitched. Brutus wasn't dead, just paralyzed. With a Herculean effort, the dying K9 lunged, sinking his teeth into Duran's wrist. The detonator clattered to the floor. Axel pounced, snatching it in his jaws as Duran screamed. Brutus collapsed for the final time, his last act saving his fellow K9s. 214, 213, 212. Elias grabbed Axel's collar. "We have to get the dogs out, now!" But as they turned to flee, the office door slammed shut. A familiar figure stood silhouetted in the smoke, Lieutenant Reyes. Her service weapon was drawn, and it was pointed straight at Elias's chest. "Sorry, fisherman," she said, her voice hollow, "but Duran's right, no witnesses." Axel bared his teeth, positioning himself between Elias and the gun. Reyes's hand shook. "I never wanted this, but when I found out what they were doing, they gave me a choice, join or die. 145, 144, 143. The warehouse groaned around them, its structural integrity failing. Somewhere in the distance, the trapped K9S began barking frantically. Elias made a desperate gamble. "Then make a different choice now. Help us get these dogs out." Reyes's eyes flicked to the dying Duran, then to the puppy trembling in Elias's arms. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, a gunshot. But it wasn't aimed at Elias. Reyes spun and fired through the office window, shattering the glass. "Go!" she shouted. "I'll get the dogs. Take Axel and that puppy and run." Duran let out a strangled curse, fumbling for a backup weapon. Reyes kicked it away, turning her gun on her former captain. "This ends now." 059, 058, 057. Elias didn't wait. He shoved the puppy through the broken window, then boosted Axel out before climbing after them. As his feet hit the ground outside, the first explosion rocked the warehouse, then another, and another. The blast wave sent them sprawling as Warehouse 7 erupted in a fireball. Elias curled around the puppy as debris rained down. When he dared look up, half the marina was engulfed. But emerging from the smoke came a miraculous sight. Reyes, leading a line of limping, coughing K9s to safety. Behind her, more figures appeared. Harbor PD officers in tactical gear, the good ones, the ones who hadn't been corrupted. Axel let out an exhausted whine, nudging the still-beeping detonator in Elias's hand. 0, 007, 0006, 0005. With a final, shuddering boom, the last of the evidence disappeared in an inferno. But as the flames lit up the night, Elias realized something crucial. They hadn't needed the warehouse. They had Axel, and Axel had lived. The morning sun rose over a decimated marina, its golden light reflecting off the still smoldering wreckage of Warehouse 7. Elias sat on the back bumper of an ambulance, the rescued puppy curled in his lap as federal agents swarmed what remained of the crime scene. Every muscle in his body ached, but his attention remained fixed on the temporary kennels set up by Animal Control, where Axel stood vigil over his recovering K9 unit. Lieutenant Reyes approached, her uniform singed and her face streaked with soot. "We pulled 28 dogs out alive," she said quietly. "Most are in bad shape, but they'll make it." She hesitated. Duran didn't. Elias wasn't surprised. The blast had leveled half the dock. "And the trafficking operation?" "Bigger than we thought." Reyes handed him a partially burned ledger. This was in Duran's safe, lists buyers from 12 different countries, dates, prices, even training specialties. She pointed to one entry that made Elias's blood run cold. K9 Axel, $1.8 million, advanced explosives detection, sold to Al Sharif, Riyadh, delivery pending. The puppy in his lap whimpered as Elias's grip tightened on the page. They were going to sell him to a terrorist group. Reyes nodded grimly. And he knew it. That's why he went rogue, why he stole that locker key. She lowered her voice. But there's something else. Duran wasn't the mastermind. Someone higher up was pulling the strings. Before Elias could ask, a commotion erupted near the police barricade. A black SUV with government plates rolled through, its windows tinted. Every officer on scene stiffened to attention. The door opened, and out stepped a woman in a crisp FBI jacket, with Axel's service photo pinned to her lapel. The German Shepherd's reaction was instantaneous. His entire body locked up, his tail stiffening. Not in fear, not in joy, in recognition. "Ah," Reyes breathed. "That explains everything." The woman approached Axel slowly, her polished boots clicking against the asphalt. When she spoke, her voice sent a visible tremor through the dog. "Hello, Axel," she smiled. "Did you miss me?" Elias stood abruptly. "Who the hell is that?" Reyes's face had gone pale. "Special Agent Naomi Voss, former K-9 handler, Axel's original trainer." She swallowed hard. "And the woman who signed the paperwork retiring him 6 months ago." The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. Voss had faked Axel's retirement. She'd been the one to sell him. And now she was here to clean up the mess. Axel let out a low, dangerous growl as Voss reached into her jacket. But instead of a weapon, she produced a dog treat, the kind used in K-9 training. "Remember this, boy?" She tossed it at his feet. "Your favorite. Just like old times." The treat rolled to a stop near Axel's paws. He didn't touch it. His gaze remained locked on Voss, his body coiled tight. Voss sighed. "Still stubborn, I see." Then her eyes flicked to Elias and the puppy in his arms. "Ah, you found his offspring. How inconvenient." Elias instinctively stepped back as 2 FBI agents moved to flank him. "What do you want?" Voss's smile never wavered. "To thank you, of course, for rescuing our valuable assets." She gestured to the kennels. "These dogs are federal property. We'll be taking them into custody immediately." The lie was so brazen, it took Elias a moment to process. "You're not taking them anywhere. They're evidence in a trafficking case." "Are they?" Voss arched a brow. She pulled out a folded document stamped with the Justice Department seal. "This says otherwise. Classified training program, all paperwork in order." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Walk away, fisherman. You've done your part." Axel suddenly lunged between them, his teeth bared. Voss didn't flinch. "Still protective," she mused. Then, to Elias, "He was always my best. Smart enough to find the locker key, strong enough to survive the ocean." Her smile turned icy. "But not smart enough to know when he's beaten." She snapped her fingers. The FBI agents moved in, and from the back of the SUV came a sound that made Axel's ears flatten. The electronic beep of a K-9 shock collar activating. Voss held up the remote. "Last chance, Axel. Heel." The German Shepherd hesitated, his gaze darting between Elias, the puppy, and his recovering unit. Elias saw the calculation in his eyes, the same look he'd had when steering the speedboat, making a plan, weighing the odds. Then, with heartbreaking resignation, Axel took one step forward, toward Voss. Elias's heart sank, until he saw it. The subtle flick of Axel's tail, left, right, left, a signal, just like he'd used in training. The dog wasn't surrendering, he was distracting. And in that moment, Elias noticed 3 crucial things. 1. The shock collar remote in Voss's hand wasn't paired to Axel. It was synced to the dead Rottweiler's collar still visible in the wreckage. 2. The FBI agents wore shoes identical to the corrupt cops at the marina. 3. The puppy in his arms had begun growling at Voss's briefcase, where the faint ticking of a recording device could be heard beneath the leather. Axel hadn't just stolen a locker key. He'd planted evidence, and Voss had walked right into the trap with it. The air at the marina grew thick with tension as Axel took another deliberate step toward Voss, his movements calculated to draw every eye in the vicinity. Elias felt the weight of the puppy in his arms shift as the little dog strained toward the briefcase, his tiny nose twitching at the scent of electronics beneath the leather. That faint ticking sound, too rhythmic to be a mechanical clock, too quiet to be a bomb, could only be one thing. A recording device. Axel had planted it. Voss, oblivious to the trap closing around her, smirked as the German shepherd lowered his head in apparent submission. "Good boy," she purred, reaching to clip a leash to his collar. "I knew you'd remember who really owns you." Elias's grip tightened on the puppy. Every instinct screamed to intervene, but the fake FBI agents had formed a loose circle around them, their hands hovering near concealed weapons. Then he caught it, the slightest flick of Axel's ear toward the briefcase. A silent command. "Play along." "Wait," Elias blurted, stepping forward. "You can't just take him. Axel's a hero. He exposed this whole operation." Voss's laugh was razor-sharp. "Oh, he exposed nothing. A few burned files? Some dead low-level cops?" She patted the briefcase. "The real records are right here, and they'll be ashes before sunset." The puppy suddenly wriggled violently in Elias's arms, letting out a high-pitched bark. At the same instant, Axel whipped his head around, not at Voss, but at Lieutenant Reyes, who stood frozen near the police line. Their eyes locked. Understanding flashed across Reyes's face. She lunged for the briefcase. Chaos erupted. Voss shouted as Reyes wrestled the case away, popping the latches just as one of the fake agents tackled her to the ground. The briefcase flew open, and out spilled not papers, but a small digital recorder with a blinking red light, its wire threaded through the lining. Axel moved like lightning. He snatched the recorder in his jaws and bolted, weaving between agents' legs as gunshots rang out. A bullet grazed his hind leg, but he didn't slow. He charged straight for the news vans that had gathered at the perimeter, where a reporter was doing a live broadcast. Voss screamed, "Stop that dog!" Too late. Axel leaped onto the hood of a patrol car, then onto the reporter's platform, dropping the recorder at the startled anchorwoman's feet. The device's speaker crackled to life, broadcasting Duran's voice clearly across the live feed. "Shipment leaves tonight. The Russians want the Malinois, the Saudis get Axel, and the Chinese are paying triple for the puppies, just like we agreed with the senator." A new voice, Voss's, responded, "Good, and the payment? $12 million wired to your offshore account. As always." The recording continued, detailing dates, locations, even the names of high-ranking officials involved. The reporter's eyes widened as she realized what she was holding. This is unbelievable. We're getting confirmation of a conspiracy reaching the highest levels of..." Voss's gunshot shattered a camera lens. In the panic that followed, Elias lost sight of Axel. Smoke grenades rolled across the pavement as the corrupt agents tried to cover their retreat. Reyes was shouting orders, her officers scrambling to secure the scene. Then, a pained yelp from the waterfront. Elias sprinted toward the sound, the puppy bouncing against his chest. He found Axel limping at the edge of the pier, blood dripping from his leg into the dark water below. Behind them, Voss emerged from the smoke, her pistol raised. "No more running," she hissed. Axel turned to face her, his body blocking Elias and the puppy. His lips curled back in a snarl, but his eyes were calm, resigned. Elias understood. Axel had done his job. The truth was out. Now he was making sure they couldn't use him or his bloodline ever again. Voss's finger tightened on the trigger. The puppy in Elias's arms howled, and from the water beneath the pier came an answering splash, followed by a familiar voice, "Drop it, Voss, or I put a bullet between your eyes." Lieutenant Reyes rose from a police boat hidden below, her service weapon trained on Voss's head. Behind her, 6 more officers emerged, their rifles aimed. "You're surrounded," Reyes said coldly. "The Attorney General just ordered your arrest on live television. The senator's rolling on you as we speak." Voss's hand shook. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, with a curse, she turned the gun on herself. Axel was faster. He lunged, his teeth closing around her wrist with surgical precision. The gun clattered to the pier as Voss screamed. Reyes's officers swarmed in, tackling her to the ground. Elias exhaled, his legs suddenly weak. It was over. But when he looked down, Axel wasn't celebrating. The German shepherd was staring out at the bay, his ears pricked toward the horizon, toward freedom. Then Elias noticed the blood. Too much blood. The bullet wound in Axel's leg was worse than it looked. The dog swayed, his breathing labored. Reyes radioed for a medic, but Elias knew. They both knew. Axel had known this might be his last mission. The puppy wriggled free from Elias's arms, scampering to Axel's side. The older dog nuzzled him gently, as if passing on some unspoken wisdom. Then, with tremendous effort, Axel sat upright, his posture perfect, his head high. A K9 to the last. Elias knelt beside him, his vision blurring. "You did good, boy," he whispered. "You got 'em all." Axel's tail thumped once. Then his head drooped against Elias's chest. The morning sun cast golden light over the quiet waters of the marina, where a makeshift memorial had grown near the charred remains of Warehouse 7. Flowers, dog toys, and handwritten notes covered the pier. Tributes to the K9 hero who had brought down one of the biggest corruption scandals in the nation's history. Elias stood at the edge of the dock, the now healthy puppy, officially named Axel Jr., sitting obediently at his feet. The little German shepherd's ears perked as a gentle breeze ruffled his fur, his intelligent eyes scanning the horizon just as his father had always done. Behind them, Lieutenant Reyes approached, her uniform crisp, her expression softer than Elias had ever seen it. "They're starting the ceremony," she said quietly. "You should be up front." Elias shook his head. This was always his moment, not mine. Together, they walked toward the crowd gathered around the newly unveiled K9 memorial statue, a bronze German shepherd, head held high, forever on duty. The inscription read, "In honor of K9, Axel, and all service animals who gave their lives for justice. Loyal beyond death, brave beyond measure." The Attorney General stepped to the podium, her voice carrying over the hushed crowd. "Because of one remarkable dog, we have arrested 17 corrupt officials, shut down an international animal trafficking ring, and passed the Axel Act, ensuring all retired K9s will now receive lifetime care and protection." She paused, her gaze finding Elias in the crowd. "But Axel's greatest legacy sits among us today." All eyes turned to Axel Jr., who stood proudly beside Elias, his tiny vest emblazoned with Harbor PDK-9 trainee. The puppy didn't flinch under the attention. He simply lifted his chin, as if sensing the importance of the moment. Elias felt the weight of the decision he'd made weeks ago, when Reyes had offered him a choice: take the puppy and leave, or stay and become his official trainer. The fishing boat was still docked nearby, its nets dry, its cabin empty. He hadn't taken it out since that fateful day. Some paths once crossed could never be untraveled. As the ceremony ended, Elias knelt beside Axel Jr., attaching a small tag to his collar, a replica of his father's, but with new engraving. "If found, return to Elias Vasquez. No reward needed." The puppy licked his face enthusiastically, then suddenly stilled, his attention snapping toward the water. Elias followed his gaze, just in time to see a familiar dark shape break the surface near the marina entrance. A German shepherd's head emerged briefly, water cascading off its muzzle. Then it was gone. Reyes inhaled sharply. Was that? Elias smiled, rubbing Axel Jr.'s ears as the puppy wagged his tail furiously. Nah, probably just a seal. But in his heart he knew, some heroes never truly leave. Moral lesson. True loyalty isn't about obedience. It's about doing what's right, even when it costs everything. Axel's story teaches us that courage comes in many forms, and that sometimes the purest hearts wear fur instead of badges. His legacy reminds us to protect those who cannot speak for themselves, and to always stand against corruption, no matter how powerful it seems.